A new challenge to the state's restrictions on abortion.
While there is technically a medical exception to the bans, no one knows what it means, and the state won't tell us.
The women pushing back against the Texas abortion ban, why they say it limits doctors from providing life-saving care, and how the state is fighting their case. A new development in an ongoing lawsuit over how the state handles children in foster care, why lawyers are asking the judge to hit Texas with an extreme penalty.
How I learned about fentanyl was finding my son in a fentanyl poisoning state, and that's how my son learned what fentanyl was too.
Texas facing a growing need to warn young people about the danger of fentanyl, how a new plan to spend millions could save lives. Hopes for a deal on border policy hit a roadblock on Capitol Hill.
We must secure the border. There cannot be any equivocation about it.
We dig deeper into the division behind the latest stalemate in Washington and how it's having an impact beyond the border.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. We're coming off a busy week for the state in court. Two high-profile laws approved at the Capitol faced legal challenges in hearings this week. One is a question of women's health, the other about regulating books on library shelves. We start at the Texas Supreme Court, where a group of women challenged the state's abortion ban. They claim it limits doctors' ability to act in emergencies and say they nearly died after doctors delayed medically necessary abortions. Capitol correspondent Ryan Chandler takes an in-depth look at the arguments from opponents and supporters of the ban.
These women and many more say the state tied their doctors' hands as they dearly wanted to give birth, but instead faced the risk of death.
After she was born, my placenta wouldn't deliver, and I was hemorrhaging.
Caitlin Cash describes her daughter as a miracle after multiple miscarriages, but this pregnancy threatened to end her life.
I lost over half of my blood volume after the delivery of my daughter.
Doctors arguing their trauma could have been prevented.
While there is technically a medical exception to the bans, no one knows what it means, and the state won't tell us.
At issue are these sections of the Human Life Protection Act, stating a doctor can perform an abortion if, in their reasonable medical judgment, a woman is at risk of death or substantial impairment. These women argue that doesn't give doctors enough clarity to act in good faith to save a mother's life, without fearing life in prison if the state disagrees.
It means that patients like my clients will continue to suffer. While I was sitting in the courtroom, my telephone rang with a call from another patient. This is real. It is happening every single day, and it is not going to stop.
Supporters of the ban point to state data showing that since the ban, 41 abortions have been performed in Texas under the medical exceptions.
We know that doctors are intervening and they are not being disciplined or prosecuted.
They say any farther clarification should be up to medical boards, not courts.
The language in the law is clear and allows a doctor to intervene.
These laws are bad for business.
Earlier in November, dozens of Texas companies told the High Court the ban is hitting their bottom line.
Businesses are suffering because of this confusion and chaos around treating complications during pregnancy.
Tech giants like Bumble say they're no longer all in on Texas.
We were hoping to really make Texas more of a hub and encourage, use programs to encourage that. I would say we have stopped that.
In a brief to the Supreme Court, companies cited stats from the Institute for Women's Policy Research, estimating the abortion ban costs Texas almost $15 billion a year. They say that's because employees are leaving Texas or looking for jobs elsewhere.
The idea that this is going to be the center and that we're going to try to, bring people from remote work into Texas is definitely not at the top of our priority list right now.
The medical sector seeing gaps as well. The Association for American Medical Colleges reports applications to Texas's OBGYN residencies fell more than 10% after abortion was banned.
We're going to start seeing fewer and fewer qualified doctors to care not just for pregnant women, but for women altogether in Texas.
The 40 companies laid out their support for the plaintiffs in Zorowski v. Texas. Amanda Zorowski says vague exceptions in Texas's ban nearly cost her life.
We were harmed, and this is wrong, and it shouldn't be happening.
But supporters of the law say it's the doctor's understanding of that law that's wrong.
We have to fill in that gap to protect mothers and their children, to make sure that our laws are actually protecting life, not jeopardizing life. And so, there is work to be done. But unfortunately, there is a lot of myth out there.
In August, a Travis County court sided with the plaintiffs, barring the law from restricting doctors. But that ruling is now on hold as the state fights back in the high court. Ryan Chandler, State of Texas.
Texas lawmakers gave doctors a little leeway to provide abortions when women face serious pregnancy complications. House Bill 3058 gives specific exceptions for ectopic pregnancies and preterm premature rupture of membranes. That's when someone's water breaks too early. Governor Abbott signed the bill into law back in June. A Texas law designed to keep sexually explicit books out of public school libraries is back in federal court. A lower court put the law on pause. But on Wednesday, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments in the state's appeal to get it reinstated. The law requires booksellers to review and rate materials they sell to schools. Monica Madden looks closer at the arguments in and outside the courtroom.
Censorship of certain books in court Wednesday.
Reader is not a book ban. Texas's new law simply protects parents' rights to decide what materials their children will read.
This is about a prohibition at this moment in time against selling any books to Texas schools.
The state of Texas asking a federal appeals court to lift a ban on HB 900, also known as the Reader Act.
We're talking about books that they know are radically explicit, that they desire to put in the hands of children.
The law requires booksellers to rate every book before it is sold to a public school, specifically identifying sexually explicit content. Book People, the state's largest independent bookstore, is leading the lawsuit.
This is not our specialty. This is not what we do. What we do is we sell books. We're really just a middleman.
Its CEO says that it's a high burden for booksellers to read each and every book to make subjective determinations.
Really don't see a way for any of us to be able to comply with this law as written, not to mention just the amount of time it takes to read a book to be able to rate it.
Appellate judges not signaling how they may rule in this clash over free speech.
We appreciate counsel for both sides for the argument, and the case is submitted.
Monica Madden, State of Texas.
The law specifies 2 ratings for books that contain depictions of sexual conduct. Books deemed sexually explicit portray behavior considered patently offensive. Those books would not be allowed in school libraries. Books rated sexually relevant also depict sexual content, but those books can stay in libraries if they're part of the required curriculum. The law also requires parents to give written consent before their child could read those books. Again, the Reader Act is currently not being enforced while the legal challenge plays out. Digging deeper, a report by the American Library Association found nearly 700 challenges to library materials or services between January and August. The group says most were books written by or about a person of color or a member of the LGBTQ+ community. This is something we looked into as part of our investigative series Outlaw this year. A fifth of the country's state-level bills impacting the LGBTQ+ community were filed in Texas, according to a Human Rights Campaign analysis. Equality Texas tracked a record 141 such bills this year, and that's up from just 12 in 2015. You can find our in-depth reporting into what this trend could mean for the state's future in the State of Texas story on our website. Texas launches a plan to spend millions to fight fentanyl deaths as a mom calls for faster action.
Can't keep chasing it from behind, and time is of the essence, and I wish it was sooner.
Where the money's going and how the plan aims to save lives. Texas could face an unprecedented penalty for how it handles children in foster care.
There's about a half dozen areas they say Texas has just been recalcitrant and slow, and they're demanding that Texas get popped.
The new development in the ongoing court challenge and how it could affect children in the state's care.